Boom. I love it,
Boom.
Nathan. I like that. I love that. I love that video. The quick little hit thing that we do. But anyways, it is inside the game. I'm Jonathan Turner, alongside my partner in crime, Mr. Nathan Wangler, and Mr. Wangler. It is show number 1. It is Monday, January the 6th, and I'm excited, dude.
Yeah, well, what a time to start it too. It's interesting. We've been chatting about doing this for a while, but I feel like the timing all kind of lined up with exactly what's going on around the sports world. It all kind of lined up perfectly. I mean, a little bit in terms of what we do and in terms of where we work and everything with soccer. It's slowed down a little bit. We're kind of in that stretch of the year where it's not as going. We'll talk a little bit about Arena League soccer and what's going on in that world because I got my first introduction yesterday. But in terms of the world of sports, it is a prime time to start talking about stuff. So no, I said I liked their timing of everything, and like I said, finally get the opportunity to jump on. And people have been responding well to some of the stuff we've already talked about on social media, especially when it comes to World Cup and what we got going on there, and then who we have. Honestly, I mean, there's a lot of stuff to chat about, especially on the soccer side. But timing wise, I think we timed it up pretty good with everything that we got going on.
Yeah, and obviously, I'm wearing my Detroit Lions hoodie today. I know you're wearing your MSN, and I appreciate you having your MSN gear on. We didn't talk about wardrobe today, but you can wear whatever you want to wear on the show. Here's the thing. I've talked about this a lot, and on today's show we're gonna kind of dive into a number of different things. The one thing I like about the idea of what we've talked about, Nathan, is that the show is going to be more unscripted. It's going to be more kind of off the cuff. If you have comments, we will create some segments where we can have some kind of control. But if you have comments, if you got questions, there's a place to do that. You can do it on Twitter. You can do it on our YouTube channel. We are on both right now, so you can let us know. What your thoughts are, or what you'd like to hear from us. That would be great. And obviously, as we continue to grow the show, we will put out some ideas as far as comments and things like that. But we got to talk about the Lions. We have to. I know it's soccer. I know we're on a soccer platform. I get it. But I'm a Lions fan. Last night the Lions were a part of history with the Minnesota Vikings. You start talking about the fact that two teams, 14-2. It's never happened in the history of the sport. It was game number 272 last night, and the Lions, who have been, I mean, just decimated on defense, right? They have lost. I think there's 16 players in total this year. I think 11 of them on defense, something like some crazy number. And that's been the talking point for the better part of the last really 6 weeks. And not last night. I mean, they took an offense and shut them down. I mean, the questions you have about Sam Darnold, if you don't know Sam Darnold, and I
The
mean,
Red Rifle.
I don't know a ton about Sam Darnold and the fact that where he's been up until this point, he's underperformed. And so but last night the Lions, they with defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn, just I mean defensively just unbelievable. They did not have a strong night offensively last night at all. But defensively, any concerns you had about that out the window, winning
Well,
decisively, 31-9. So,
right. Well, and a lot of that is pulling away in the fourth quarter. Here's the thing that I'll say, and I had an issue leading up to this game, still have an issue with it. The regular season's over, number one seed's wrapped up, first time in franchise history. Very happy about that. But the last couple of weeks, I've always said this, and it's tough to, when you talk about a Lions franchise that has so many people on the bandwagon right now, they're all kind of buying into this team of destiny narrative. It can get pretty problematic because you stop looking at issues within the organization from an objective standpoint. Everything is hunky dory. Everything is perfect. As long as we have 11 guys out there that have a Lions uniform on, we have a chance to go win it. I understand and I appreciate that mentality, but you're right. We have an injury list on the defensive end that resembles the Battle of Gettysburg. I mean, it's bad. And not only that, you talk about we lost Terrion Arnold. last night. So we don't know what his status is, and we continue to lose more players on the defensive side. But I've always said this: winning in the playoffs, it comes down to defense, right? Those Monday, those Thursday night games that end up being like 16-10. That's typically what a playoff game looks like. That the majority of that game yesterday, that was a playoff game in a lot of ways. So this idea, this team of destiny idea that, oh, don't worry, Aiden Hutchinson will be back for the Super Bowl, and don't worry, we're going to get this guy back after 2, 3, 4 weeks of not playing football. If you don't have a consistent group going through the entire season with you, specifically on the defensive side, and it's a constant changing of guards, typically what that does is derail you. And I feel like the last couple of weeks we've seen the products of those injuries kind of take place. But what yesterday was, and especially getting Alex Anzalone back, Aaron Glenn put on a defensive masterclass. I mean, he deserves an apology, a cookie, and a firm handshake from anybody that ever said that he couldn't coach the defensive end of the football. Because what he did yesterday, and to answer your question about where Sam Darnold came from, I mean, he learned from the Mike Shanahan playbook of how to play the game, how to play quarterback. I mean, that Shanahan family tree, it's one of the more expansive coaching trees that is. It's one of the most expansive coaching trees in all of football. I mean, it's right up there with Belichick and Saban. So he kind of learned from their blueprint on how to play the quarterback. But what made the difference yesterday, and it was something that I noticed from Aaron Glenn very early in that game, man, the blitz packages were just overwhelming. I mean, the stunts, the off balance pressures, where they were bringing pressure from. That's how you're able to get into the head of a veteran quarterback like that, especially in a game where you're playing down numbers. I mean, the truth is that the hand that Aaron Glenn was playing was good in disguise and confusing enough to where he could get through to someone like Darnold, who's having the best year of his NFL career, and then allow the offense to just kind of go step by step with that Vikings defense. And on the other side of that, though, too, JT, with Jahmyr Gibbs, here's the benefit about being able to run the football in the game of football. You control the clock. Right, it's unlike some of the other sports and even soccer, what we call, right, possession constantly changes. You can play a game of possession and sit on the ball, but the clock's running regardless. In football, if you can run the football more effectively, you get to sit on it and control time, really from beginning to end. So what they did in the second half, and we've seen this same blueprint and this same style of winning play out for this team multiple times before. Good defensive stops, put yourself in a close game late, and then lean on that offensive line. And not just Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, if we get David Montgomery back, this two-headed monster in the backfield is something that really not a lot of defenses can handle. But Josh Reynolds, I think, has stepped in and done an admirable job in that number 2 spot behind Jahmyr Gibbs. But it was a combination of Aaron Glenn masterclass and also being able to run the football. I just hope we can continue to get healthier going into the playoffs, because, again, it's still a concern that people kind of sit back and think it's an assumption that we're going to get to that end point. I think yesterday was a good starting point, but no, I mean, I know that he likes to hand out game balls at the end of games. Dan Campbell, that is. I think if there's one person that deserves it, it's Aaron Glenn. And I know what Jahmyr Gibbs did, but I'll say it's easy, but it's easier when you have those road graders up front on the offensive line. I'm giving that one straight to Aaron Glenn. He deserves it. And I think that's ridiculous that you should have to win 15 games in order to win your conference, but it's just the reality of where we are this year. So, defensive masterclass by Aaron Glenn.
Yeah, I would. I think that'd be an understatement to say a masterclass. But I for we both have lived in Michigan for most of our life. My entire life. I can't say if you lived in Michigan your entire life or not, but I know obviously that I have. Have you lived here your entire life? Yeah.
Outside of it momentarily, but for no longer than 6 months.
So, I mean, anyone that grew up here in Michigan and has been a Detroit Lions fan understand. If you grew up here and you've lived it, you understand. If you did not grow up here and did not live here, you do not understand. I was actually sitting alongside my analyst yesterday at Oakland when we were calling a game, Horizon League basketball women's game yesterday, and we were talking about the Lions matchup, and she's like, "I'm a Bears fan." I'm like, and she's like, "Well, right now the Bears are not
Get
doing
out.
very well." I go, you can't compare, you can't compare your Bears to the Lions. Okay, in 40 years, give me a call. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's like
Yep.
it doesn't count, right? And I'm not trying to say that, whatever pain they're experiencing is not painful to them, but it's not the same. It's not one and the
Right.
same. But so for those of you just tuning in for the first time, you're gonna hear. I mean, you're gonna hear this from us on a I wouldn't say a daily basis, but you're gonna hear from it maybe at least a weekly basis where we talk about the Detroit Lions. Right, and we are just getting things underway. Playoffs start here for them in 2 weeks. Playoffs start for everybody else this weekend. So it's just going to be something that we're going to be talking about throughout our time in here. And if I really want to get into this show and what it's all about, we've talked about it kind of in our promos and kind of testing everything that we've been doing here over the last couple of weeks. I said I don't want to get boxed in, to anything specific. I just want to come on here every single day and have a conversation with you, Nathan. I want to have a conversation with the guests that we might bring on, and really just have discussions about general things going on in the sports world, along with things that are going on with us here at the National Soccer Network and our platforms. Obviously, that's very important. We've got a busy day today. We've got 2 games in Arizona this morning that kick off here in just about an hour and 20 minutes or so. Um, and so yesterday we had 4 games. On Saturday we had 4 games. On Friday we had 4 games. So I mean, we pretty busy weekend for us. We've got more games coming up this week. But the thing I wanted to dive into this morning is both you and I are commentators, right? And for those of you who don't know the different lingo in production land, we call it talent, right? We're the talent. When you get into the nuances of a production, you've got your production crew, right? Your team that is made up of camera operators, producers, utilities, graphics and instant replay. There's a whole level and layer of all these different pieces and components that are part of the process of a broadcast. But when you start talking about your commentators, like Mike Tirico last night, Chris Collinswood, they are your talent along with Melissa Stark, right? And
Right.
so me and you would identify as the talent in most cases. But on Saturday for me, I actually hopped on a baseline cam, at Oakland. I'm like, I want to give this a go. And, because I'm the owner of the company, they're like, yeah, sure, go ahead, do it. I mean, if I wasn't the owner of the company, that wouldn't be the
At that
case.
point, you
But
can do what you want to do. Yeah, that's how that
yeah,
works.
I pulled the owner card. And I was like, I'm going to give this thing a go. And
I
I'll be
know
honest.
you've played that a few times. That ain't the first time you played that.
Well, I mean, and that to be fair, I mean, and God love David Forrest, who was assigned to the base camp. Like, dude, you're still gonna get paid. I just, you get to go
Yeah.
sit in just
Right.
relax for the next
That's
couple
his
hours.
main concern.
But yeah, I mean, it was a blast to be able to do that, and because I've been a camera operator. I worked the Horizon League, men's championship games here back in November as a camera operator. And you might say, well, as the owner of the company and as most of the time talent, why would you want to even be in that role in the first place? Me, I want to learn everything. In order for me to be the best owner, the best president of this company, I firmly believe that I need to know everything. I need to
Yeah.
know what a camera operator goes through when it's raining outside, in November, while operating a camera, and what our color analysts need to deal with when they're sitting inside our studio. Like those types of things, and um, that's a core reason. Is just
Right.
for lack of not knowing or for an interest in learning how to
Right.
to to be in that position.
Well, and to even be the best talent that you want to be, that you starting off in this industry in this field. Now, barring that you have some sort of family connection or, God forbid a last name that might be able to launch you into a career before you really have to do some of the grunt work, then you might have to bypass some of that. Then maybe you already have an understanding because you've been surrounded by it. But even to be the best talent, like with me, I don't own the company, clearly. I work under you. But in order to get to where I've been and have a better understanding of not just how to broadcast a game, that's one thing. We've talked about this on previous episodes, you and I. That's about 5% of what we do. Right? And 95% of what we do is everything else surrounding the production, surrounding the game, everything that goes into it. So that's the production side. Before I ever broadcasted a game, and mind you, I did a couple of college and high school games. I was producing games on the radio. I was tucked away in a studio downtown producing games, understanding exactly what it takes. Come in at breaks, out of breaks, carrying breaks, doing all these other things, making sure ads fire off at the right times and all that stuff. I worked in production. I worked in camera crews as a media relations person, coordinating interviews between athletes and the media. And that's one aspect of this game that definitely takes a little bit of getting used to. These are human beings that we're talking about, and a lot of them sometimes don't like cameras. Trust me, I've met a number of guys who are one way. They are eccentric, they are outgoing, they are everything you want, and then you put a camera or a microphone in front of them and they shut down. They go into a shell. So it's learning how to deal with different personalities. Some of them want to talk to the media, some of them don't. Some of them are like, hey, leave me alone. All right, I'm doing my thing. You stay in your lane, I'll stay in mine. And then you have to teach them, like, listen, if you want to play games at a professional level, most importantly, if you want to make $5 million, you got to talk to the media. I'm sorry, you don't have a choice. Like, this is how this goes. So dealing with those personalities and media relations, learning how the production value works, learning how to be a sideline reporter and be someone else, and also how all the technology and the equipment. Now, that's a hard part because it's constantly changing. You and I know this firsthand. Everything that we're using, even the stuff we're using right now, will probably change tomorrow. And I'll probably have a new setup in here in a couple of weeks because something sounds better. That's just the reality of where we are in terms of the evolving equipment. But in order to be the best talent, and I respect that about what you just said, because I think it's true. And I don't think every boss thinks that way. I think every boss thinks, well, I'm the guy, so I can pay another guy to do the thing. You know what I mean? But you being able to step in and learn that stuff is important. But I would even expand that out. And I know we talked about how an element maybe of this show might be to, in a way, kind of teach other people what it is that they need to do in order to break into this. Because you and I are both here. And I know you've talked about a school, you've talked about other stuff and being able to teach people and recruit new people. Well, if anybody's watching this right now and you want to get into what we're getting into or be here, you got to learn everything. And it's not an easy process. It's a process. It's a lot of grunt work. It's a lot of stuff you don't want to do. But the only way to truly have a good solid understanding of where you need to be as a talent and what it requires of you is learning all the different aspects of the business. Do you get any good shots though? That's my question.
I think I did. I mean, I can't
Good.
speak
Right.
to, I can't speak to what I don't know. I mean, I think that there are some shots that I got that were, that were top notch. Um,
Right.
you know, I mean, it's funny because you're kind of like, hey, when I do a game as a broadcaster and I'm the talent, I do want to have the highlights. You know what I mean? Like the highlight reel moment, right, with the last second shot or whatever, and I go back and I listen to that to see how that would sound. And I'll tell you, when you're a camera operator, you kind of go back and say, okay, well, what one of my clips made the reel? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Right. Yeah. Well, and not only that part is really important too. And so, to me, it's and that's why it's important to anybody that's watching right now. I'm not really quite sure what happened to JT. We'll try to get him looped in here pretty quickly. Been having some technical difficulties. You're talking about production value though, and the importance of that. And the thing is, me being coming from a smaller school, and this is why I love those NAI dogs. Anybody that's from the NAI, you get a vote from me. Anybody who's from the state of Michigan, you automatically get a vote from me. But production value is so important, and it's something that, and I don't know if you can relate to this, JT. We don't have to get too far into the weeds on this, but it's convincing people in front offices that broadcast quality and quality production is something that isn't just important for the here and now. And you talked about briefly before you cut out there the big moment and being able to match the big moment. It's not just about this moment right here or this call or just being able to show mom and dad or grandma and grandpa the game. It also comes down to a lot of other things: recruiting, brand recognition. All of those other things play into having good production and good quality calls. So when you have a production crew that's able to step up and do what they need to do, and also it's the little things, JT. It's what you were just talking about right there. Did I get the right shot? Did I capture the right moment for that moment that can really highlight this call and really bring it to that next level? You guys at Oakland certainly seem like you're moving at the right direction. Clearly, it's your company that's running the show. So if you're not, that's on your shoulders. No, I'm just kidding. But um, that is an extremely, extremely important aspect, the production side of it. And that is something that I think is worthwhile. And I think it's worth certainly the money if you're going to invest into it. And that's what I would tell anybody that's leading a school, anybody that's leading a program. That's where it starts, right? How is your media coverage in comparison to other schools? Because if it's better, I guarantee you're going to benefit from it. So that's the way that I see it. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, I used to be a roaming camera operator doing college basketball at Cornerstone, and I mean, I would always try to get as many good shots as I could because I understood what that meant at the end of the day for that school to be able to put those clips out and get that, maybe that vision, that look from other people that they don't typically get, especially in an institution like that.
No, yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And it was interesting. I was looking at something on my computer, and all of a sudden went blank on me. So I apologize.
You
Little
just
of a
stop
point.
pressing buttons over there. It's just,
I'm
it's
I'm
just not
I'm
going well.
I'm multitasking, but and if we talk about the trajectory, of someone's path, it doesn't necessarily have to be a path in broadcasting, but a path in general, a journey, so to speak.
Yeah.
Whatever that might be. There's a combination of things that have to play out, right? There's got to be an aspect of learning, right? An educational component. Not all jobs require a tremendous background or education, right? Not all do. Some do, right? Lawyers, doctors, engineers, right? Those require school and specialized training. To be fair, in the world of broadcasting, um, yeah, and I can tell you this because I didn't have any formal training. You can get started without any training. You can get started without any experience. Now, does that mean that you're going to be successful? You know, Again, each person is different. I'm not going to say no, but I think your likelihood of being successful is probably not on the higher side to someone
Right.
that has gone through and invested in themselves, right? And there are a lot of people that do that. I mean, there are people that will. I know that you do, for example, every year go to the Michigan Broadcasting Association, like the thing down at Ford Field, and there's an opportunity for you to get in front of a camera and kind of talk. I mean, while that might just be a day or two, it is still an investment into what you're trying to do to get better, right? There's an investment
Uh,
there. Um, I can tell you this, that 3.5 years ago, 4 years ago, before I even got into any of this, I had no idea the level of prep that one would need in order to be successful in this endeavor, in this realm, right? The amount of work that you have to put into, if you want to be successful, it's not even close.
right.
I mean, if we're putting things in perspective of the teams that we're calling,
Right.
for example, yesterday, I called two basketball games on Friday and Saturday. So, sorry, on Sunday. So over the course of 3 days, I called two basketball games. That means that I had to prepare for two separate matchups, right? And that preparation for me started back in October, right? Why? Because that's when I got the schedule for the games, and so my prep started back in October for those two games. Now you can only do so much prep. You can put into your spotting board, and we're going to get into this too as we go down this pathway. But into your spotting board, and the best way to explain a spotting board, I don't have one in front of me. Maybe you have one in front of you. I have one off
Nope.
in my backpack
It's on my
behind me,
laptop, so I can't really show
but
that on the screen. But
well, we could share our screen, but on my spotting board are the players, their numbers, where they grew up, their hometown, if they transfer from a university, and then next to them is a place for all their stats. Now, every sport is different, right? Every sport has different ways of tracking stats, and to be fair, basketball is one of those sports where there are so many categories, in regards to a player, right? There's minutes played per game, how many games they played versus games they started. You start talking about field goal percentage, 3-point percentage, free throw percentage, blocks, steals, assists, points per game. I mean, the list can go on and on. And baseball, I'd imagine same thing. Football, if you're a receiver, you might have four categories that you're going to maybe look at. So and all those things, they change, right? So, like for example, Oakland, they were on Friday they played against Cleveland State. They were averaging at that point they were averaging just under 60 I think 60 points per game, 63 points per game. Well, then they played again on Sunday. So I can't use the same stats. I can't use the same
right,
data. I mean,
right,
Maddie Skorupski. I mean, she had a season high of 29 points on Sunday of last week. Yeah, Sunday, and on Friday she scored 25 points. So she was four shy of her season high and career high, on from the previous week. But if you look at it, how many games did she start? Well, she started 13 and played in 13. Now she's playing in her 14th game on
right,
Sunday. So everything is changing. Right. So as
right,
much prep as you might do leading up to a game, it's going to change for the next game. And then anything regarding their season-wide stats, right? Team stats, the comparables. Because I like to do is I like to have comparables. Okay, well, if Oakland is first in the Horizon League in blocks, well, where is Cleveland State? Well, they're third, right? Like you want to be able to see how they kind of measure up against each other. Uh, how about the matchup? How many games have they played against each other? Cleveland State. I think that their matchup. I think historically this was their 23rd overall match between Oakland and Cleveland State. For Purdue
yeah,
Fort Wayne yesterday, it was the 33rd all-time match.
uh-huh,
Right, and then you start talking about storylines, Nathan. Right? I mean, as a play-by-play is when you're sitting next to an analyst, we are looking at storylines for our games. We are looking at what is something that we should really hone in on and
right,
really like give the audience a clear idea of what's happening.
right.
If I go back at that
Well,
Friday game, if I go back to that Friday game for a second, I know you want to hop in here, but that
yeah,
Friday game, the Golden Grizzlies had not beaten Cleveland State in 7 years, 13 games. They had gone unbeaten. Sorry, they had not won a game against Cleveland State in 13 years. It was 2,869 days. Okay, that was the amount of time.
right.
And their last time they won was February the 25th, 2017.
Huh,
So we talk about that before the game. It's on my spotting board. It's on
yeah,
my board. It's right there so that I know when the clock hits zeros, if Oakland's in the lead and wins this game, what am I
right,
going to say to
right,
acknowledge the moment for what it is?
right. Well, as human beings, right? If I'm sitting around a campfire, and it's something I loved, even as a kid, right? Going up north, parents always had a place just north of Walkerville, north over here on the west side. I mean, it's one thing we love about Michigan, right? Like you got big sprawling cities, but you also got the middle of nowhere too. Unfortunately, we have the latter. And growing up going there, one of my absolute favorite parts about that. And it was a very little thing, but it was hanging at the campfire. Um, and my grandpa Ben, who was easily the best storyteller I've ever met in my life. Um, and these were made up stories. Obviously, they were campfire stories, but his ability to set the scene, tell the story, build up to a climax, and kind of connect all the dots was amazing. And everyone was enamored by it. And it was the reason why we ended up sitting there and loving listening to him, and in a lot of ways, that's exactly what sports broadcasting is. Every game that you do has a story attached to it in one way or the other. So that's why preparation, you want to talk about things that separate good and great. Preparation is the number one thing. What are you doing to find that extra level of prep? And there you go, that you're able to kind of string it all together. Now, is a kind of look at the statistical breakdown that you have over here. But the other big thing is JT too, and as everybody obviously kind of takes a look at what exactly is on the screen here, the other big thing that I look for whenever I'm calling games is how can I connect the dots to make this random assortment of numbers mean something, right, to the normal listener? Because this, I mean, to anybody that's watching out there right now, I mean, if I'm just a normal Joe looking at this chart, I feel like this looks like an Excel spreadsheet. Like I don't even know where to start with it. This looks like French to me. But you look at it a little bit closer, right? 12-2 overall. They're pretty good. You look at the percentages. So as a play-by-play broadcaster, and this is I actually have a section of, so what I'll do is I'll have boards, but I'll typically have separate of that. I'll have quick notes. So I'll have like a Word document that I will take all these numbers and I will obviously create the formulas that make sense, right? So one team dominant from the perimeter, right? One team very good at defending the paint, good rim protectors. How do all of those dots connect? Because for me, when I'm calling a game, right, mentally, I try to picture my audience having that aha moment, right? Where the light bulb goes off, where they're like, oh, okay, well, this makes more sense. Now I know what this team does well. Now I know that. So I know what to expect when I'm watching the game. So all of these numbers, the biggest thing, if you're a broadcaster, and the thing that keep in mind here, one size doesn't always fit all. And that's the truth about preparation. That's the truth about delivery, everything that we do. Because even my game notes look far different than what you have in front of you right here. I've seen spotting boards like this, so I could probably work my way through a game if I had this in front of me. But it's figuring out a way to connect all those dots. And like I said, ultimately, the ultimate truth is that what it comes down to, if you want to be great as opposed to just another Joe, it's preparation. This is the level to where you're able to go deeper and figure out storylines and other things to add context clues to a thing that doesn't already have it, that makes it more interesting for people watching. It's creating a story. It's creating a villain. It's creating a hero, much like any other story, tall tale fiction novel we've ever read in our life. It's all movie. It's all the same, but we're doing it in real time. That's the difference. And we're setting that story up in real time. And all this helps. It's a good layout though. I like it.
Yeah, I've played around with it, and I it's crazy because we this fits up on an 8.5 by 14, so a legal paper, right? And I have legal
Right.
folders that I have made for this.
A legal document.
Yeah. So, but I think it's important to kind of show what it is. Obviously, at the time of this game, Oakland was 5-7. Um, you see there they were 3-0 in conference play. If you look at Cleveland State, they were 4-0 in conference play. So two undefeated teams in the Horizon League. And so it's a big deal. It's a big game. I on obviously right here on the left, I've got all of my players, their numbers in order. Right, always good to go. No one likes to see order numbers. That are 0, 7, 12, 2, 18. No, it's good to have them in an order so that if you're trying to find them
That
on the
drives
board,
me
I
up the
know
wall.
it does.
Jonathan Turner. Here's our roster.
I know it's the
Here's a
worst.
jackpot of numbers. Have
Yep,
fun.
yep. Obviously we have our along the right hand side here. I've got a conference record. What happened in their last game? So what did Milwaukee? What did they do in their last game? They went to overtime against Milwaukee. They won that game. Their preseason rank first. Their current season, they're 12-2. They'd won 10 games in a row to this point in the season. The third time that
Mm.
they had done this in the last 3 years. So this team has had 10-game winning streaks over the last 3 seasons. 22nd meeting all time. They're 17-4. Who they have next games they got coming up too. I thought that's always good to see the next games they've got coming up. So, it just kind of goes to show you what the level of prep that goes into a specific game. And again, these numbers change each and every time there's a new game. And
Yeah,
so
that's why it's
it's
important to
just
have a shell, to something that you can continually go back to. Um, and I can,
Jesus.
I mean, come next episode, I can screen share what we got going in terms of baseball notes. They're a little bit more, I guess, intricate, so especially with some of the weird stats that baseball has. But that's the biggest thing. It's just making sure that you have a shell to come back to. Because but it's tough. I mean, you and I know, especially because you and I get into seasons, and this is when you're covering Oakland, right? So this is a team that you continually go back to and you cover. It's one thing to do that. It's another thing to be a lot of times what we are, which is finding gig to gig, especially at the high school level or the club level. And we're going day to day. We got different teams and different spots and different area codes. I had one in Oklahoma City yesterday. I'm sitting in a studio in Metro Detroit with the sky zoom shot of downtown Oklahoma City, talking about this town that's rich in Western heritage and old country shootouts and this, that, and the other thing. But that was something that was just kind of spur of the moment. I had learned that you need that game covered. So it can change from team to team, right? If you're a team that you're consistently with, have that shell, have something you can go back to. But every now and again, like the reality, the tough thing is that prep isn't always just going to be a routine thing. Sometimes it's something you're going to have to do on the spot in order to get prepared for whatever it is that you have in front of you. I think we got experience in both areas, but that's important too.
Yeah, I mean, when you start talking about getting into the college environment, there's infinite amount of information that is at your disposal. And so you're right. The prep can be endless. It can be infinite. Whatever word you want to use. I could spend 17 days preparing for a 40-minute basketball game at the college level, and I could spend all of negative 13 seconds on a soccer game that's going to come up here in the next hour on our platform. So things like that, it's just
Right.
it's insanity to me. But yeah, I just think it was kind of cool to kind of show people inside, the prep, and as we dive down the path and more into our episodes, we'll be back at this again tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. We'll dive into a lot of this stuff, throughout our journey. Some housekeeping notes. First time stopping by on our platform, don't forget, hit that subscribe button, like us, and share this with your friends and family. You can listen to this on all listening platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it. It's all available on listening platforms. So check that out. That'll be available here later this morning, and every day thereafter, after the conclusion of our show. Um,
We gotta decorate our backgrounds, by the way. I don't know.
Well, I,
I know
I
you.
I'm not typically going to be in the studio. Not right now. This today we picked up some games here
I
today.
liked your green screen though. You what was that, downtown Chicago? What'd you have behind you?
Mm-mm.
I thought the last
That
time it
was
was a big
downtown
library.
Detroit. It was downtown
Oh, downtown
Detroit. So
Detroit. Okay, all right. You had a big library behind you last time. I got a few decorations over here. It's interesting because we're doing the split screen. I thought maybe my background would be a little bit bigger, but because I'm decorating this whole back wall and putting up sound panels, the whole thing in here. But I got a couple of different things. I actually brought one to show you today that I will be putting in my studio.
nice. Oh,
That-
nice,
That's
nice.
that's Uncle John. So my Uncle John played at Michigan late 70s under Bo Schembechler. He's a starting quarterback there his last 2 years. I believe Ricky Leach, if we have any old fans here, where he was the guy in front of him before my Uncle John got his opportunity. But the one, I believe, one and only Rose Bowl that Bo Schembechler won. Amazing
Wow.
considering how many he went to, but played there. And this was it. The old shut helmets. not as safe as the buckets they have today, but both of his sons went on to play and everything, and his mom started a big chili tailgate that was ranked one of the top 25 by Sports Illustrated in the country. It's a whole thing, man. It's the Wangler name's big down there, but I got that, and I also got a signed. Let's see if I can grab it here in a little bit, but a signed cocktail napkin as well by the one Bo Schembechler. I was being born there pretty soon, and my uncle didn't have anything else to sign, so he just grabbed a cocktail napkin, and that worked just fine. So I got a framed picture of that over there, but I'm gonna dress it up a little bit. I'm not just gonna have a gray darkness or gray void behind me from now on. But this is episode 1. Like I said, we got to get number 1 out of the way.
Got to get one out of the way, Nathan Wangler. And it's currently here in Michigan. It's 9:40 a.m., so about 20 minutes left to go here in our first ever episode. And I think it's important as we talk about our show that we dive into kind of who we are, right? And I'm gonna let you kind of lead the way with this one. And so the first question I have for you is what are your political viewpoints?
Oh God! On number 1. All right, here we go. One and only one. We're the one and done podcast.
I'm just kidding.
Here it comes.
Why don't you tell the audience about something, a little bit about something about yourself?
No, see, the thing about me is, so I was born, and I'm not unique in this way, but I was born into a sports world with my dad. Was always very involved. Always coached all my teams, which I'm very appreciative of. Oddly enough, the other background decoration I got going on over here is my old middle school football team, and he's actually right in the middle of it, and it's a framed picture and very fun. But there was always a game on, and there was always something on the radio, something on the TV, and they say that, your earliest memories sometimes can hold the key to exactly what it is that you're going to do in the future. And one of the earliest things that I ever remember grasping onto in my life, it's weird. I don't remember a whole lot else from this part of my life, but I always remember broadcasters, the game being on, the reactions and the emotions surrounding those games. I don't know what they were reacting to necessarily. I mean, I was a little kid, but I think early on I kind of grasped onto that. And as I got older and older in the summer days and just messing around in the garage with Dad while he was working on cars or whatever else he's working on, he's very much a handyman. Listening to the likes of Pat Hughes, Dan Dickerson, hockey, Doc Emmerich, some of the other, greats that we've obviously listened to throughout the years, their ability to, like we were talking about earlier, right, tell a story, but also feel like you're just sitting next to a guy in the stands. Right? You feel like you were teleported there. So it was very early on that I kind of fell in love with the art of broadcasting. Playing sports was fun. Being there in person to watch was fun. But being the guy who delivered the emotional moment seemed like something that I wanted to do very early on if it was doable. I didn't realize how much of a winding road it would be, but that's kind of what you sign up for once you get into this. So anyways, fast forward, get into college. I go to Central Michigan, biggest broadcasting school in Michigan. Don't let anybody fool you. I mean, that their broadcasting program they have there, it's all student run, it's all state of the art, and they have multiple radio stations, TV station. I mean, if there's one place, and I swear anywhere you go in this business, ask someone where they went to school. I guarantee you're going to get at least 2 answers. You're going to get one Syracuse and you're going to get one Central Michigan. Okay, it's going to be one way or the other because that they just produce them left and right. And to be honest with you, JT, and I know I've dived into this a little bit with you. I don't know if I've ever told you the whole story, but it didn't work out. I only lasted a semester there. There were some things that didn't line up, living situations, and coming from a smaller private school and high school to a big public institution, you can get lost. You really can get lost in the sauce. And that's kind of what happened to me. So I left there, tried to join the Army. I have scoliosis. Can't do that. Wanted to be a military police officer. That didn't work out. So I transferred to a little NAIA program, Cornerstone University. I guarantee you the majority of our listeners, barring that they're from Grand Rapids, have ever heard of Cornerstone University. But it's on the Beltline in Leonard Street here in Grand Rapids. I got a couple thousand kids. I mean, it was NAIA Division Two back when the NAIA was two different divisions. And the one thing they had was a really, really good basketball team and then a bunch of different sports with all the equipment. We talked about broadcast equipment coming along. They had all the equipment to stream games and do that. They just didn't have the bodies. They didn't have the interest because you're a small private school that gets the majority of its kids from international, out of state. You don't have a whole lot of vested interest in sports broadcasting. So it kind of had to take it on myself. Me and two other guys kind of started essentially what is the broadcasting program at Cornerstone University. And that led to a connection at the Whitecaps, the Tigers affiliate, worked my way up media relations production, eventually got onto the TV side, which lent itself to other opportunities at, Davenport University and some of the other high schools. And obviously with you, doing my stuff on TikTok and being able to grow my following there. And then you saw me, and then now I'm doing stuff with you, and I'm down in South Bend. And so, just to tell you a little bit about me, I'm a sports guy through and through, but it's because I believe in the romance side of the games that we call, because I do think there is a side of it that is just entertainment based. And I know we talked about, well, what's the point of sports during our last episode? Do I gain anything financially? No. Do I lose any weight? Do I have a six pack now because my team won? No. But the reason why we love sports is entertainment based, but because it's a community. And I felt that love early on, and the ability to deliver that moment, those special moments, those life-changing, happy moments to people was really something that was really inviting to me. So I guess if that gives you a look at me at all, I hate talking about myself, JT. I'll be the first to tell you I absolutely despise it. But that's a little bit of a look into why I ended up pursuing this job field and why I'm sitting here right now. And it's weird. It's weird how things work out, but I think it all comes back to, and I know he would love to hear this, but I think my dad was the biggest reason why that happened, because he was there, he was supportive, and watching dad and his passions really kind of helped form me into who I am, and the thought of maybe one day, before he's gone, I can be the one to deliver one of those big, happy, exciting moments, on a major league call or on a, Michigan football or whatever else it is. And I'm realistic enough to admit I'm enough of a realist to know that maybe that won't ever happen, but I'm gonna try. I'm gonna do everything I can. So that's a little look at me. It's been a long journey, but just happy to be here, honestly, with you.
Uh, well, I'm happy to be here with you as well, my friend. So, I mean, yeah, that was good, and obviously, there's going to be lots of time for us to dive more into the psychological component of
Um,
all of this.
yeah, there's layers.
Peel back the layer one layer at a time, right? So that's cool. But
Make you cry like an
well,
onion.
everybody has a unique story, and I don't know if me and you are like really any different in the sense that while I think that you kind of knew going into your collegiate, and in that realm that you wanted to be where you are, or at least try to be where you are. Maybe didn't necessarily quite know the path or quite understand the path, and that kind of all kind of started to shape its way out to where you are
Yeah.
now. I mean, I got started in this, 4 years ago, and I'm 43 years old now. I might not look 43. I mean, maybe I do look 43. I don't know, but so I didn't go to college for this. It wasn't even something that was even in my anywhere near my perspective or purview of what I thought I could do on any level. I was in sales and marketing. I was selling cars out of college. And got my way into selling advertising and about 10 years ago, I was running I was a vice president of operations for a machinery brokerage firm here in Michigan that we sold machines all across the country, and I decided to step away from that and start my own company doing the exact same thing, and that was right around COVID time. And as part of my the way of trying to sell what I was doing, it was creating content like this, creating podcasts, and I just so happened to have a friend of mine who was in the soccer world, who I'd known through coaching and things like that, was like, "Hey, I think you got a pretty good voice. Have you thought about coming out and maybe doing one of our games?" And I was like, "No, I've never thought about doing a game before," and I dove into it, and you know, 1,500 games later, here I am, and it's been fun. It's been a learning process along the way. Throughout all of this too, it's like with the Oak University thing. I'll be the first one to tell you, like, the whole Oakland gig, it came because of a relationship, right? I knew somebody who did not know how to call a soccer game. They knew how to call basketball, and they had been reached out to by somebody, and they recommended me because they knew I was calling soccer games. I'd only been calling soccer games for about 3 months. I mean, to think about that for a second, all right, Nathan. I mean, we're talking about Division 1 athletics. I'm not talking about lower levels, and I've called every level you can call, from high school youth all the way up to professional games in this country. And I mean, to get yourself into a spot where you're calling Division 1 sports for ESPN, that is not something that just comes at you, on a whim. I mean, there are people out there who have been doing this for a long time who have not yet cracked into that world. And I did 3 months into doing this. And that might probably piss off a lot of people who have worked their asses off to get to this point. And I understand that. There are people out there that have been doing this for far longer, or probably far better than me. But because I was in the right place at the right time, and and because I am good, I would always say that, am I great? I don't put myself in the great category. I don't put myself in the great category. Um, but what I think the thing for me, and this is when I look at it from a standpoint as an owner of a company who's looking for talent, right? I am looking for people, one, that are dependable, that when they say yes, they're going to show up. And number two, I'm looking for someone that can guide the ship and do so in the least painful way possible. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's number two. And then number three is C1 and 2. Right, like, it's like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I mean, because
Right.
at the end of the day, talent is talent.
Right.
And everybody's got different variations of that talent, and obviously you want quality, of course we all do. But at the end of the day, I can't guarantee greatness. But what I can guarantee is dependability and guiding the ship.
Right.
That's what I can guarantee. So
Right.
from my perspective, and it's different when you start talking about Monday Night Football, or you start talking about the national championship. That's completely different. It's not just about
Mm-hmm.
dependability anymore, or about guiding the ship. It's about, this person better be an unbelievable talent, right? That's why Mike Tirico is there. That's why you've got Joe Buck where they're at. That's why you've got these guys. These people are
The
where they are
best.
because they are the
Yeah.
best at what they do.
Yeah.
That's different than the guy calling the game on Sunday at 1 o'clock in Nashville, or in Tennessee, where that's your 15th guy on Fox who's
Right.
calling that. You know what I mean?
Right.
That guy's not calling Monday Night Football. If he was, he'd be doing it. So, but even Fox and all these other organizations that are broadcast companies, they do the exact same thing. They take the best of a group of people, and they put them in these buckets. And you're
Right.
okay. You're going to call the 1 o'clock kickoff in between the Titans and the
You gotta
terrible
do what you gotta
Browns.
do. Right.
Yeah.
What?
So, and that's why they flex games like they do, and they move games around. But again, what I will say is this, and we've got to wrap this show up here today. But my advice to any commentator, anybody out there in this world, I don't care where you are in your path, whether you're in high school, whether you're in college, whether you're like me and you kind of fell into this at 40 years old, is you cannot be afraid in this world You just can't. There is
No.
no room for being for having this fear, right? That's going to
Nope.
prohibit you from going forward.
Yep.
Always say yes, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Say yes, right?
Yep.
I'll tell you this right now. I got offered the opportunity to Oakland. I said yes to it, and I went out and did it. They then called me a week later and said, "John, can you do a volleyball game?" I said, 100%, transparency. I've never been to a volleyball game. I've never seen a volleyball game on TV, but I will do it. And they're like, John, we believe in you. Okay. So 3 hours later, I was doing a volleyball game on ESPN. Now, I made some phone calls when and just not to get graphic, but I remember I was taking a shower. I literally had my phone and I was watching a YouTube video about the basics of volleyball. I was watching a YouTube video in the shower while I was getting into my getting ready. And did I do great?
Right.
Probably not. But then they asked me to do another one. And then they're like, "Hey John, can you do basketball?" I said, full transparency. I've never called a basketball game. I've been to some basketball games, but I've never paid
Mhm.
attention to them like that. I mean, this is a whole other level of stuff. And then I got asked. I did that, and then I just became like their number three. So
Right.
I got the leftovers. I got the I got the leftovers,
Right.
and then ultimately Jake Riesma, he was the number two at Oakland behind Neil Rule. He left, and then they like, John, you're going to take over the women's basketball duties. So I've this is my second straight season of calling the women's basketball team. It's like 13 or 14 games in a season at home, and I'm calling all those games. And um, I was just telling this to you the other day. I go, I felt for the first time, like on Friday, I felt the most comfortable I've ever been calling a basketball game was on Friday. That's like 30 games into calling basketball games.
Right.
I guess that goes to show you, it takes about 30 games before you start feeling comfortable calling a basketball
Takes
game.
time. Yeah. Well, and so I'll wrap it up. I know we got to wrap up here pretty soon. Right place, right time is huge. That's in a lot of ways. That's kind of what got me in the door. Other guy had to step aside. I was there. I was an option. Is a TV medium. Few different people had differing opinions on who should be in that spot, but eventually I won out, and so that's what got me in that opportunity. So, right place, right time is huge. But I'll also add this, and this is something that I wish I understood maybe a little bit earlier in the process. Always remember ABC. Always be connecting. I don't care who it is. I don't care what team it is. I don't care where they are. Ask them for their opinion. Send them tape. Be like, what do you think? Let's chat. Let's get lunch if we can. And, if you're not anywhere close, let's have a phone conversation. Just give me 5 minutes of your time, right? Just give me the opportunity to have you hear my voice. If nothing else, just listen to me talk for a little bit, because maybe at that point we can kind of form a relationship. And then if stuff opens up and out down the line, then it opens up. I mean, I'm kind of talking to a couple of different people right now. I'm not going to name names, but I'm trying to shadow a couple of people, maybe go see some game days. I just want my face to be in the building so people know exactly who I am. And hopefully that'll work out for me in the future. But ABC, always be connecting. I've been told that's a huge one. Also, a little ego sometimes goes a long way. Always be open to critiques, always be open to finding out what ways you can be better. That's very important. But if you don't own your spot, if you don't own who you are in this business and believe in whatever that model or brand is, it could be your own social media, it could be the position you have, anything you're doing, you're not going to make it. It's going to be really, really hard to get through a lot of those games where you start to question exactly why you're doing this. So always own your spot. That's what I'll leave us with here in episode 1.
Well, I love it. I love it, man. It's been a great first episode. Don't forget, we'll be back at this again tomorrow morning. Same time, same places on YouTube, on our Roku channel. You can listen to us on Apple as well as Spotify and any other listening platforms that your heart desires. And yes, there's a Michigan helmet there on the screen.
Go blue.
But want to thank everybody for tuning in. Hit that subscribe button, like us, and share this with your friends and family. And Nathan, that ends a wrap here on episode number 1.
Absolutely. I'm happy to do this. Let's get back at it tomorrow. Hopefully I'll be a little more festive in the wall behind me come the episode tomorrow.
No worries, no worries. Have a great rest of your day. So long, everybody.